For 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been an incredibly electric hearing. It'd be funny if it weren't real life. I understand my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to be victims so very badly. But Ms. Navaroli, if I understand you correctly, public criticism and allegations of anti-conservative bias are actually making Twitter and other social media companies less willing to enforce their own policies against political conservatives, correct?
Yes, that was my understanding based on research that was done at Twitter.
Meaning the same Republicans insisting on making themselves a victim is working?
Could you repeat the question?
The same Republicans, folks on this panel who are insisting on making themselves victims in this conversation about Twitter censorship and other accusations they've made, is this working because of the conservative bias and the implications of it? Or the allegations of conservative bias?
In
other words, are the allegations of conservative bias making it harder for those in Twitter or those who are working there to enforce these policies against folks who incite hate speech or make...
Thank you for rephrasing that question, and thank you for asking it. Yes, these allegations are very much having an impact on the leadership within every social media company as they hope to not receive allegations of being biased or in any way being politically leaning.
Thank you. I'm not the only lawyer in the room, so you all know that while the Constitution does provide us the right to free speech, there are, of course, limitations. As Ms. Navaroli pointed out, we cannot yell fire in a crowded theater. Compromising freedom of speech may seem dangerous until we weigh that compromise against the men and women massacred in Buffalo, for instance, or the many other places where radicalized violent extremists found their motivation to kill on social media. This isn't about oppression. It's about public safety. This isn't about censorship. It's about protecting our democracy from misinformation. Ms. Navaroli, it was your job to decide whether someone was yelling fire in the theater. Could you describe the coded incitement to violence policy Twitter did not implement?
Yes, thank you for that question. The coded incitement to violence policy was an incredibly nuanced policy that was created in order to fill the gaps that were existing in the already existing policies around violence. The policies around violence were explicit. So these were calls that said, I'm going to, I want to, I plan to, I wish to. Those sorts of incitements would have come down. Things like stand back, stand by. Things like I am locked and loaded and ready for a civil war were dog whistles that were not covered underneath the policy.
Thank you. Could it have saved lives if it were implemented on January 5th, 2021, or possibly in November of 2020?
I can't speculate as to what might have happened, and I do wish we would have acted.
Thank you. Ms. Gaddy, the very same words that were plastered across Twitter were shouted at the January 6th insurrection. What threats do Americans face now that Elon Musk has removed all guardrails and welcomed back Donald Trump to the platform?
Thank you for the question. I'm actually not really familiar with what the content moderation policies of Twitter are today.
Okay, thank you. Social media platforms like Twitter must own up to their responsibility in spreading violence and chaos. I'd argue so too do members of this panel and institution. Thank you. I yield the balance of my time to Mr. Raskin.
Thank you very much. Mr. Roth, I want to go back to the whole question of your finding